Welcome to Larry King Live. Tonight, heavyweight novelist Norman Mailer weighs in with 1,300 pages on the CIA. And Robert Stack fires off another round as Eliot Ness 30 years later. Now, here's Larry King.
Good evening from Washington. A couple of notes as we start. Kathy and Jeffrey Willits, that famed couple from South Florida. She's the one that slept with a lot of people in South Florida and says it's nymphomania, not prostitution. This will be their first major coast-to-coast television appearance. They'll be on together tomorrow night. Wilt Chamberlain will be here to discuss Magic Johnson, among other things. Monday night, Gary Sick's book finally come out on the October surprise. He'll be here and he'll be debating with Ed Meese, the former Attorney General. Glenn Close will be with us on Tuesday. He is one of the great American writers. The release of a new Norman Mailer project is always a publishing landmark. His latest, Harlot's Ghost, is as imposing as the man himself. A 4-pound novel about the CIA. It took 7 years to write and may not be over. The last page says, to be continued. And as per usual, anything Norman Mailer touches is filled with controversy. It is already a bestseller and widely discussed. We welcome Norman Mailer to Larry King Live. It's good to have you with us. Let's discuss the bad before the good. You are angry at the New York Times, which scathed the book, and they're allowing you to rebut.
Well, I'm not angry at them. I told them that I would like to give them a page. I'd like a page. I didn't want it in the letters column, and they agreed. And so I can't really talk about it, unfortunately, because it's going to come out on the 17th. And
this was the John Simon review.
Yes, yes.
Now, when you get as famous as Norman Mailer is, has written so many books and all the awards you've gotten, I mean, your place in history is firmly etched. Does a critique still bother you?
No, look, I've gotten bad reviews. I've gotten, from my point of view, murderous reviews. I got a review once from the New York Times book review for Ancient Evenings, which I'd spent 11 years working on. And the review said that the first 200 pages are terrific, and then somewhere along page 200, a disaster occurs, and the book is dreadful thereafter. And
it doesn't bother you?
No, well, that did bother me, but it didn't bother me personally. I didn't feel that the reviewer had an edge, put it that way. Or that I felt the reviewer simply had that reaction. That was, from my point of view, wholly unfortunate.
But that's fair game.
That's fair game. You get a good review, you get a bad review, you don't complain.
Simon, you felt was personal?
Yes.
Okay. Harlot's Ghost. Is it really part one of a continuing novel, or was to be continued kind of a put-on? No,
it's a little of both. I always like to send out a mixed message, which is why I get into trouble.
But, really, Norman?
Well, for me, there's no such thing as a clear message. Whenever I hear a clear message, I say, here we go again. It's phony, it's false.
It's like a plot.
No, a mixed message catches both halves of a situation. I really believe that we look at life that way. There's a part of us that's an optimist and a part of us that's a pessimist. And so we take a mixed message on everything.
Okay, so
there's a part of me that likes you terrifically. There's a part of me that likes you a little less.
Norman, so in other words, it may be continued, is what you're saying.
Well, it'll be continued if I can do it. I'm hoping to do it. It'd be a major book. It would have to be at least as good as this one, and probably should be better. And together, the two would make an enormous novel that a few people might get around to reading.
When you started Harlot's Ghost about the CIA, did you know it would go as long as it did?
No, it's like a marriage or like a love affair. You can meet a lady for a night, and then lo and behold, 6 months later, a year later, you're married to her, and then it goes on for 50 years. So novel writing is very much like that. You can think you're starting a short story, and it can become a short novel. A short novel can become a very long novel.
Why did you choose the CIA?
Oh, I've been fascinated with it ever since 1950 when they started. I've always been taken with it.
Why?
Well, a novelist is his own intelligence agency. I mean, we novelists go around and we observe everything we see in varying degree, but we look at everything. We're trying to put it together. We're trying to understand it. It's very close to the sort of work that intelligence officers do.
By the way, why did you choose fiction? Because you're as good, it's very rare, but you're one of the few that can touch nonfiction. You're a great reporter. Your stories about covering lots of bases, Armies of the Night and others, classics. Why didn't you go nonfiction?
Oh, I think that, to me, fiction is always the major leagues. It always will be. It's just much more exciting to write a novel than nonfiction. Moreover, there's been some very good nonfiction done on the CIA. I mean, Thomas Powers wrote a comprehensive book, The Man Who Kept the Secrets. Terrific novel. Not novel, terrific book. And so I don't like to write books if what I'm going to do is, in a sense, be covering the same ground that other people have covered.
You researched a lot, though, right?
Oh, yeah, great deal.
What changed, if anything, about your opinions about them during the course of writing?
Well, I came to recognize over a period of time that the CIA was even more bureaucratic than I thought it was, and that you couldn't begin to understand it unless you saw that wonderful interplay between the rogue adventurers that you have here and there in the CIA, and there's plenty of them around, and the essential bureaucratic structure of it. It's a fascinating organization because nobody really controls it the way people think there's a mastermind at the top that's directing them to do this and do that. It's not like that at all.
No?
No, it's a reflection of, first of all, it's a reflection of the president, what the president wants. But you also have any number of elements in the CIA who are obstructing the president, or for what they feel for the best reasons possible, which is that he's wrong.
With the Gage hearings.
You know, for instance, during the Cold War, there were a lot of people in the CIA who felt that the Cold War was being exaggerated. This was toward the end of the Cold War. There were a lot of people in the CIA who felt the Cold War was insufficiently appreciated, that the Russians were much worse than we thought they were, or that they pretended to be. So this division went on until finally communism collapsed. That the people who believed that this was all a great scheme of disinformation in order to make us believe that Russia was weak, but when in fact they were still strong, are now somewhat embarrassed.
Is it therefore impossible to say whether or not they are efficient?
It's impossible. It would depend on how you came in and measured it. If you're dealing in for instance, well, I don't know how to put it. It's just, when you get into something that is essentially not, where the limits are not defined, how are you going to come in and measure whether something's efficient or not?
But they could have done something very good today, right? They may have prevented a killing today. We're never going to know about it.
We're never going to know. In fact, like other intelligence agencies, the CIA loves to present itself as comic. You know, as bumblers, as fools, because people worry about an intelligence agency when they feel it's sinister, when it's concerted, when it's efficient.
You know, so if you can laugh at it,
yeah,
don't look the other way.
Well, we've been laughing at the CIA for 30 years.
Howard Hunt reviewed your book.
Yes, he did.
Did he like it?
He half liked it and half felt, it was a very interesting review. I read it with great interest. It was a gentlemanly review. After all, I made him a character in the book. He's a very important character in the book. He hardly mentioned that. And he had one marvelously funny moment where he was talking about how we'd both been in Paris at the same time. And he said something to the effect that if we'd met, he would have tried to convert me to get me to work for the CIA.
Would you ever have worked for them?
I probably would have been, secretly, I probably would have been more complimented than I would have liked if I'd been invited.
Norman Mailer's our guest. His book is Harlot's Ghost. It's a major bestseller and very controversial and a long read, and a lot of people love it, and some people are angry at it, and nobody dismisses it. We'll be back. We'll start including your phone calls as well after this.
We have traveled together for more than 80 years.
You can hear it.
We have seen trends come and go. But through it all, one symbol has stood for simple, honest values. Things that last, and giving you more than you'd expect.
The heartbeat of America.
The cars more people depend on.
That's today's Chevrolet.
It happens every morning in London, Paris, and Madrid, just as the city starts to stir. In Munich, Manchester, Zurich, and Brussels, just as the business day begins. In Glasgow, Stockholm, Frankfurt, and Milan, as the new day arrives, so do we. American Airlines, with more non-stops to more of Europe than any other airline. Over 200 flights a week to 11 European cities in 9 different countries. So fly the one airline with more non-stops to more of Europe than anyone. American Airlines. Something special to Europe. It took all day, but they finally came up with one very big idea. What do you bet they printed on a laser jet from Hewlett-Packard?
Tonight on Sports Tonight, The entire sports world is rocked by the sudden retirement of Irvin Magic Johnson, who says he has contracted the HIV virus. We will cover the story from stem to stern on Sports Tonight at 11 Eastern. Join us.
Our guest is Norman Mailer. His book is Harlot's Ghost. The publisher is Random House, and of course he wrote Naked and the Dead and The Executioner's Song and Of a Fire on the Moon and Marilyn, a biography. He's a graduate of Harvard, engineering graduate, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I remember that. You're not, you weren't a major in English.
No, aeronautical engineer.
Huh. Did you ever think of taking that up?
No.
Before we go to calls, I want to cover some bases. Your book deals largely a lot with the role of the CIA in this society.
Yes.
How do you think the Americans view it?
Oh, I think most people are hostile and suspicious of the CIA, and often for good cause. And they have this uneasy feeling that these people are kind of controlling, calling the tune.
Internally?
Yeah, and then there are people, of course, who feel it's absolutely essential to us. And I, paradoxically, because I'm much opposed to much the CIA does, but I feel they're more necessary now than they've ever been. See, I don't think they were that necessary during the Cold War. I think
but now necessary. Why?
Well, then they were, they became a propaganda organ, essentially, and they were there to defend the Cold War. And I think the Cold War was over 20 years ago, and no one ever admitted it, because there were too many good things going on for too many greed bags in America to admit that that war was over. That's my idea. At any rate, I think now we really need good intelligence. We have to know which countries have nuclear potential, which small countries who are unstable.
They have a lot of PhDs at the CIA, don't they?
Oh, well, good 2/3 of the CIA is probably academic. You could think you were in a university.
What did you mean by the thought that it's created a WASP culture?
Well, I didn't say it's created a WASP culture. That's just someone else said it about it. No, I think that the people who started the CIA certainly were WASPs. And WASPs are very determined, strong people with a great deal of, they've been called everything from barbarians to martyrs. But in fact, WASPs have a very intense idea of America, maybe a more intense idea than anyone else. It's their country, after all. They started it.
They owned it.
They own it, and they still own it.
Right. The concept, Norman, of the spy as we envision the spy, when you get into his head, what kind of person is that who will never get any credit, never see his ego fulfilled, hides behind buildings, fear for his life? What kind of person is that?
It depends. It depends on the kind of spy. But the average spy is usually very middle class and works in a government office and becomes a spy first because he happens to have access to material. And then people study him. And there's a long process of wooing a spy and creating one, turning him, getting him to work for you. The emphasis, there's a long chapter in Harlot's Ghost where Harlot, Hugh Montague, gives a long lecture about how you create a spy, how you work to develop him. And the basic idea finally is to always keep it from being dangerous. In other words, given the middle-class mentality of the average government worker, the idea is to let him recognize that you're his friend, if you're the control, that you are going to get him money. You give him money very regularly, not too much, because you give him too much, he'll go crazy. But you give him a little, but it's very steady. The emphasis is entirely on middle-class benefits.
There are no bonds, no James Bonds.
Very few indeed.
To your calls for Norman Mailer. What a career. Albany, New York. Hello.
Larry.
Hi.
Yeah. I would like to ask Mr. Mailer, I just finished reading a book by Mark Lane about the assassination of President Kennedy, and I was astonished by it because it made me realize how much power that the CIA does have. I would like to know, in your study of the subject, have you discovered that the CIA does have more power than the American public is aware of? Or
implying that they were involved in the assassination, Norm?
Well, a lot of people think they were involved in the assassination. They certainly weren't formally as a group. In other words, the CIA didn't say, let's assassinate President Kennedy. There may have been rogue elephants in the CIA, little enclaves that were involved in that assassination. That's beyond my competence. The more I studied it, the more I felt the answer has been covered over by every element in America and in the world from left to right. Everybody from extreme left to extreme right, and everything in the center. They all said, what if we're involved? And after the assassination, I think everyone covered it up.
Chicago for Norman Mailer. Hello.
Hi, Mr. Mailer. I'd just like to begin by saying I think you're a very interesting man, very intelligent writer. And I just finished reading Peter Manso's biography of you.
Yes.
To try to get some insight as to why you wrote Marilyn a biography. It almost seems to me that I understand that you've never met her, and it seems almost like it's a fantasy book that you wanted to, I don't know, perhaps maybe lay some claim to the Marilyn myth and perhaps just explore why maybe she never...
Caller, can I ask you, does a biographer have to know the subject? of the biography?
No, it just seemed to me like the book was more or less like his own fantasy, like he exaggerated on a lot of the things about her.
And you didn't like it?
I was just wondering, you know, where he came up with this. And
Norm?
Well, you know, you live with your imagination. No, I don't think it was a fantasy. It's a book. I always was fascinated by Marilyn Monroe because she had such an extraordinary quality. You know, she was absolutely the girl next door, the sexiest girl next door you ever saw. At the same time, she was extremely skilled and talented comedian and might even have become a serious tragedian if she'd lived long enough. She was a wonderful woman with terrible complexities.
Why was that book so controversial?
I don't know. To this day, I don't know. I think it's just a good biography, not a great biography, but a good one. I think it just gets people irritated that I didn't know her, and I find that amusing. You know, what if I wanted to do a biography about Napoleon?
Lincoln.
Anyone.
Norman Mailer, the book is Harlot's Ghost. The publisher, Random House. Robert Stack, still to come. Wilt Chamberlain tomorrow night. And the Willets, Kathy and Jeffrey Willets from Fort Lauderdale. We'll be right back.
The Movado Museum Watch. The dial design chosen by the Museum of Modern Art for their permanent collection. The Black Sapphire Museum Watch. A futuristic interpretation from Movado.
Nighttime. One of the worst times for pain. Pain that's hard to face alone. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay. It's the strongest Bengay ever. For muscle pain that's hard to ignore. Minor arthritis pain. Back pain, pain that seems worse at night. New Ultra Strength Bengay with added power and a third pain reliever. Deep, penetrating warmth for fast, long-lasting relief. You can say goodnight to your pain with new Ultra Strength Bengay.
You know what's smart? This Magnavox digital CD shelf system that's incredibly powerful, compact, but what's really smart is this Magnavox 8mm Easy Cam that weighs less than 2 pounds. But what's really brilliant is this 13-inch TV with a built-in VCR. But what's ingenious is this 31-inch with a smart window that lets you see other channels and swap the picture. You know what's smart? This Magnavox digital CD... Again. Go away.
The ingenious products from Magnavox. They're smart, very smart.
GMAC just dropped its rate into low to help shift the economy out of neutral. With low 2.9% APR on 3 great newly styled 1992 full-size GM cars. Pontiac Bonneville, Oldsmobile 88 Royale, and Buick LeSabre. 2.9% up to 48 months lets you indulge in GM quality and help stimulate the economy. So get out of neutral. Drop into your participating GM dealer, get in gear with low 2.9% GMAC financing today.
The Movado Museum Sports Edition Watch. A tribute to the spirit it takes to play the game and win. The Sports Edition Museum Watch for men and women from Movado.
He's one of the great literary figures of the 20th century. He is Norman Mailer. The book is Harlot's Ghost, Cleveland, Ohio. Hello.
Hello. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Yes, I was wondering, when you did your research, if you found anything out about the National Security Planning Group, which Reagan formed in 1981, which was chaired by George Bush and essentially had the authority for all the covert operations by the CIA.
No, I wasn't working in that period at all. My book runs roughly from 1955 to 1965, with a little bit in the present, but I just didn't do any research of that order.
And real people weave through the book.
All through.
All right, is that, Doctoral has occasionally done that in books, is that make the task more difficult?
Well, it does if you lose your nerve. If you get scared and you say, I'm mixing real and fictional people. You see, in my point of view, there's no such thing as a real person. That's we're real, you're real, I'm real. But the moment we get into a book, we're no longer real.
So George Bush is real, but if we put him in a book, he's not real.
He's equal to a fictional character. Because after all, look, we use a word like Russia, and then we think we know we're talking about Russia. It's a fact. That's not a fact. That's 5 facts we have in our head and 82 suppositions we have about Russia. So it's fiction.
Yep, I buy it. Copenhagen, Denmark, with Norman Mailer. Hello.
Good evening, Larry. Good evening, Mr. Mailer. Great show.
Thank you.
Mr. Mailer, I want to ask, have you ever felt to be under some kind of pressure from the CIA regarding what to write or
did they bother you at all on this?
No, no. In fact, they'll never do anything about it, I would think. I mean, if I were the head of the CIA and someone said there's a book out, I'd say, pay no attention to it unless it becomes an extraordinary bestseller, and then we'll do something about it.
They will not, Mr. Gates will not comment on this book.
No, and I don't have to worry about any alleys or stuff like that.
Was he a good choice?
Well, probably in a funny way. I mean, I think he's probably, you know, the head of the CIA is not supposed to have a very sweet character. I don't think he's the nicest guy you'd ever meet, but that's neither here nor there. The key thing is whether he's flexible enough as an old Cold War ideologue. Is he indeed loose enough to be able to take the CIA into a new world? If he is, then fine. He's got the experience. And in fact, you need someone now who comes out of the CIA, because you've got to take a lot of people around the bend. They were living in a Cold War for 20, 30, 40 years.
Right, you've got to move them.
Yeah, they got to move into a new world, yeah.
San Francisco with Norman Mailer, still to come Robert Stack. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Mailer, I'm wondering if you're familiar with Professor Alfred McCoy's book, The Politics of Heroin, CIA Complicity in the Global Drug Trade.
I'm slightly familiar with it. By the time I write the next book, I'm going to be vastly more familiar with it. Because it's going to be, the next book is going to be in large part about Vietnam.
You're writing a book about Picasso, too?
Well, this is in between. It's a short book. It's not no attempt to write a huge, terribly important book about Picasso, but I've always wanted to do a quick book about Picasso.
Sarasota for Norman Mailer. Hello.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mailer. I'm about 3/4 of the way through Harlot's Ghost, and it's terrific, but it is kind of hard to see where fact ends and fiction begins. Are the four main characters based on real people? And also, is your description of the Bay of Pigs fiasco very close to the way it actually happened?
Well, to answer the second question, yes, very close. The main characters are all fictional. That is, Hugh Montague, his wife, Harry Hubbard, and his father, Cal Hubbard, are all fictional.
How do you pick the names of characters?
Oh, they come to you, and sometimes they'll come quickly, and you start with the name of the character. Sometimes you work and work and work, and you're never sure, never happy. Once in a while, you got to change your name because there's something wrong with it. Very rarely, but you do.
Pensacola, Florida. Hello.
Hello. Norman Mailer.
Yes.
This new book you've written is in a very different style than usual. Wondered how you decide which style to use.
Well, I don't think of it as a style. I try to find a voice for each book. And the voice should be adequate to the experience. In other words, if you're writing a book about an opera singer, you should have a lot of twists and turns in your style that would indicate something about the richness of her voice. Whereas if you're writing a book about the West, you might want a particularly simple style, as I used in the Executioner song. I like to change the style for every book.
And this comes naturally to you, easily to do that?
Well, if I'm thinking of the voice, yes, it does come.
Because most writers, we expect a style. So if we're going to read Ken Follett, and he's writing Eye of the Needle or some international spy, there is a Follett style. Yeah. There's a storyteller. Yeah. You're not a storyteller.
Well, I hope I am. But it's I tell the story in a different style.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Well, that's why I'm fascinated with Picasso, because he kept changing his style all through his life. He had many styles.
Therefore, it was always surprising.
Well, not always. Sometimes he'd go back to an old style, but he had probably 10 major styles. So I feel it's
more interesting.
Yeah, I feel he's absolutely a great artist, but I feel a certain small kinship to him.
Silver Spring, Maryland, for Norman Mailer. Hello.
Thank you, Mr. King. I'd like to know what Mr. Mailer thinks about Hillary Mills's biography of him a few years back. I've read it, and it paints an awfully dark picture.
Well, you may have read it more carefully than I did. I thought it was a reasonable book. When Hillary wanted to do it, I hardly knew her, and I said, well, look, I won't hurt you and I won't help you. You're on your own. And so she said, okay, and then she wrote the book. I didn't, you know, it's not very close to me, particularly, the book.
Are you going to do a biography of you?
Oh, that would be the last book I do, because I don't want to use up all the little places that I've... You know, when something happens to you that's truly interesting and you don't write about it, you then can save it, and you can beam a light through it from one direction or from another, and you get 18 stories out of one story. The moment you tell the true story, you've used it up.
But you don't know when the end of the trail is.
I don't, so I'm going to have to guess. But I mean, the world can live without one more book about me, you know.
Yeah, but I would think people would be fascinated to hear you talk about your life.
Yeah, but I don't want to write that book too soon. I'll gamble. I'll save it for the end.
Norman Mailer gambling. What a shock. Thanks, Norman.
Thank you, Larry.
Norman Mailer. This is a good job, you know. Imagine somebody back in the 17th century getting a chance to interview Shakespeare. I talked to Norman Mailer tonight, and they're going to be reading him 200 years from today. His new book is Harlot's Ghost. The publisher is Random House. As Mel Brooks would say, this is a good job. Robert Stack is next, and would you believe it? Eliot Ness is back Sunday night in a special. The Untouchables return. Tomorrow night, Wilt Chamberlain talks about Magic Johnson and other things. And finally, Gary Sick is here Monday night to talk about the October surprise. We'll be right back.
Coming up, The Untouchables ride again. Robert Stack returns as Eliot Ness.
Bob Nickel knows a little French cafe where the food is magnifique, but the bill isn't. Now, where do you suppose he'd rent a car? Budget, where he finds the most luxury Lincolns, over 3,500 locations worldwide, and very tasteful prices. The smart money is on Budget. Right now, rent 2 days and get the third day free on compact through full-size cars at participating Budget locations. Call for details. The smart money is on Budget.
Freedent's the one. Only one gum leads the way when you've got dental work, and that's Freedent. Freedent won't stick to your dental work, so you can be confident chewing it. And because it also moistens your mouth and freshens your breath, Freedent's in a class by itself.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Around 1900, GMC Truck built America's first gasoline-powered truck and went on to make trucks our only business. A heritage of trucks that, some say, worked a little harder, lasted a little longer. And that's still true today in a truck that gives you the most standard payload and the strongest resale of any full-size pickup. Sierra, from GMC Truck, more proof of the strength of experience.
Throughout history, they have conquered and divided. Now they will try to join together to economically rival the world. Hear the hopes and fears of Western Europe on a CNN special report, Sunday, 9 Eastern.
What is the safest sedan on the road? Ask the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. They studied 134 different car models, comparing fatality rates in highway accidents from 1984 through 88. By that standard, the safest sedan on the road is a Saab 900. One more reason why we don't make compromises. We make Saabs.
Mom says we're having oatmeal, and Tommy says cinnamon toast. Who's right?
They're both right. What does that say?
Instant Quaker oatmeal, cinnamon toast. All right.
Seems to me like the right thing to do.
Yoplait, low fat, calcium rich, with active yogurt cultures. It's something 40-year-old Vicky Gentry does every day. Smooth, creamy Yoplait. Do it for you.
Larry King Live continues, followed by World News, next on CNN.
We've taken Thomasville quality, combined it with Rotman's great value, and look what we've got. This is our Thomasville oak bedroom.
The beautiful graining, the rich design.
This bedroom, the double dresser, mirror, headboard, and nightstand, is a good value at $1,200, but it's now at Rotman's for $799. Just $799. Fantastic!
To receive your free catalog of furniture and carpet specials, call 1-800-7-ROTMANS.
We're cleaning house at Silver Lake Dodge and Leasing. I want this showroom cleared to the bare wall during our 1991 clearance sale. At these prices, everything is going to move, like this brand new Dodge Colt hatchback for the amazing price of only $69.95. Times are tough in the automotive business, but Silver Lake Dodge is going to make it a good time for you to buy with the lowest prices in town. Help us clean up for 1991 at prices you'll never see again at Silver Lake Dodge and Leasing.
This is CNN.
Welcome back to Larry King Live. He burst on television with a hail of gunfire over 30 years ago as federal agent Eliot Ness. And now actor Robert Stack has resurrected his fictional alter ego one more time. He stars in The Return of Eliot Ness. It airs this Sunday night on NBC. Robert Stack joins us from our studios in Los Angeles. I thought, Bob, you were always resisting this. Every time we spoke, someone would say, what about doing a remake, a return of The Untouchables? You always said no.
For 20 years I said no, Larry, and I didn't want to do television in the first place, as you probably remember, going back to the old days when movie actors didn't do television series, a dirty word, and we did the show, a very difficult show to do, and we lost our assistant cameraman, Wilbur Bradley, died of a coronary, working 14, 15-hour days. At the end of 4 years, I was really tired, and the Ness concept was finished, and I was going to go back to pictures, and the years went by, and people talked about coming back and doing Eliot Ness again, and it wasn't, weirdly enough, until the movie came out, and Kevin Costner played Ness, and he brought the name back to an entirely new generation that it became topical. Otherwise, you go back 30 years and you're talking to a lot of elderly people, and the youngsters have no idea, like the youngsters don't even know who the Beatles are, as a matter of fact. As a result of that, though, people came to me, and actors, friends of mine, and directors like Richard Brooks, he says, bring the old bastard back, you know, they'll make him macho, but bring him back. I think it'd be a good idea. So finally they came up with an idea. The thing that interested me was the fact that it wasn't a young guy going in with 6 other people. It was an older man going back to a war he didn't want to go to, no gun, no badge, and kind of like Lonesome Dove. It was a diagonal of fighting a war out of time, a war he doesn't want to go to, as I said, and he's still scary. The guy is still dangerous, but he can't jump as high or run as far and whatever.
What is the time period he's in?
1947. It's the year that Capone died. It's the year of The Godfather. So it's still period. And it was, I tell you, when I put that hat on, I looked in that three-way mirror, it was, the vest looked fine and the hat looked fine, but the face looked, I got to tell you, Larry, it was like looking at my daddy. It was kind of funny.
Bob, Kevin Costner told us when we talked with him that Ness was difficult. It was very hard to play someone straight on like that.
Yeah.
Was he for you?
Kevin Costner is like my favorite actor of today. I think he has the character of Gary Cooper. I think that the camera embraces him the way it used to Cooper and Stewart and so on. He's a real movie star. The answer to your question is that Ness was a strange man. I had a very nice note from Mrs. Ness, Elizabeth Ness, to the effect that I somehow managed to capture a lot of things characteristic of her husband, and that made me very happy because you never know going in. The point was that...
And strange, you mean strange how?
Strange in the sense that, in the first place, when the man declared war on Capone, and Capone owned Chicago and all the police, it was almost suicide, the fact that he turned down all the bribes, as you know. I've got a $10 check that was given me by one of the producers that dealt with $10 that he bet on a ball game. He didn't have $10 in the bank, and he had to post-date it to make it work. And you know, he was offered bribes, they all were. That was the reason the name came up, the Untouchables. So a guy who marches to his own particular drummer, who's a strange kind of a guy who's not going to be scared off, doesn't do it for the money, that makes him a little bit strange already.
If this does super Sunday night, will you do another one?
You know as well as I do, Larry, everything happens on the numbers, the Nielsen's. If they tune in, they'll find a way. The original Untouchables, and we began that, nobody had any idea where we were going. They kept saying, what do you do after you catch Capone? And it's a stupid title. It's like a bunch of East Indians. And nobody, I can remember ABC thought they had 2 really hot shows. They had the Pat Boone Show and Adventures in Paradise with Gardner McKay. And when they put the show on the air, they sort of shuffled it in the background because of the dirty garbage cans and the alleys and the hookers and the machine guns, and nobody really thought it was going to work. So if this does work, then the audience wants to see this kind of a show and doesn't mind seeing me, then they'll probably find a way of maybe doing like 2 a year, I guess.
One thing that added to the magic of The Untouchables, we've spoken about this before, was the incredible voice and narration of Walter Winchell. He added a staccato to it. Is there a Walter Winchell on this one?
Now, this one is a completely different structure. This is, I say, a man who's retired. He goes to the funeral of his best friend who's been killed, And he doesn't have any idea of going back to war. And he finds out, he meets the boy of the fellow who was killed. And there's a story in the papers that he colluded with the mafia. Two things. Number one, he wants to find the guy who killed his best friend, and also to clear the name of a guy who was untouchable and was an honorable man. It begins with that and progresses, and it goes miles away from the original idea of the vigilante and the five guys going in and knocking down the doors and the beer barrels and all the rest of it.
Now, if this goes twice a year and you start to do more of it, you're not going to leave Unsolved Mysteries, though, are you?
No, Unsolved Mysteries. You know, we talked about that earlier. Things develop like Topsy. Anybody who says, like Tartikoff said when he was at NBC, if I knew what the audience wanted, I'd be the richest man alive. All I can do is make a calculated guess and throw it out there and hope. Now, all the things that I've done that I expected to go never did. Motion pictures. We had 1941, the whole world, pictures in Time magazine, and me and Belushi. A picture called Airplane nobody thought was going to work, and Zappo. So the same thing is true of this kind of a show. You just, Unsolved Mysteries, it's like the McLuhan idea of the two-way communication. You send the message, it comes back. Now, the audience doesn't just sit there like a couch potato. It watches. It involves itself, and thanks to them, we've caught 43% of the criminals whose faces we've shown on our show.
Yeah.
So it's a show I'm very happy to be involved in because, you know, I'm pro-law enforcement anyway. And we were number 5 last week, so God bless all of those who tuned in.
Robert Stack, he'll star in The Return of Eliot Ness. It airs Sunday night on NBC, and everybody's looking at this. How well will it do? What will be the effect of the Costner film on this production? Will young people watch it? A lot of answers going to be answered early next week. We'll be back. We'll start including your phone calls for Robert Stack, indelible in the history of television. Back after this.
I want to see Art Maldo.
Does he know you're coming?
No. Tell him it's Eliot Ness.
Buddy, if he don't know you're coming, you don't get by.
Who says?
I got orders. Now get out of here.
You tell him it's Eliot Ness.
Imagine being born with the ability to meet any challenge expertly. That's the wonder of the Maxim XI from Minolta. With the experience of professionals programmed right in, it responds to any change of speed, or light, or distance automatically. For ultimate performance, the multi-talented Maxim XI, born experienced. Only from the mind of Minolta.
Who can you trust these days to take care of your car when it starts shaking?
Or pulling, or rattling.
Or squeaking.
For suspension or alignment, nobody beats Midas.
I worry about something I can't see.
What your eyes can't see, our state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment will show you. You'll get a written estimate before we start. No surprises. Whatever the problem, we keep it from getting bigger. For alignment, shocks, or struts, nobody beats Midas. Nobody.
Jamaica.
Headline News, I'm Chuck Roberts.
Baltic leaders are already working.
From the NCAA basketball.
When you need the latest news, business, and sports, updated every 30 minutes around the clock, you need CNN Headline News. Anytime, all the time.
Let's go to your calls for Robert Stack, Vienna, Austria. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Stack. Hello, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. I was just wondering, what do you in your travels, have you ever met anyone like Howard Stern?
I didn't. Howard. I'm sorry, he doesn't know who that person is. Tarpon Springs, Florida. Hello.
Yes, I'd like to know if Mr. Stack was offered the role in the Untouchables movie and if he turned it down.
You're very kind. There's a small segue of 30 years, almost, at least 25 by the time the picture was made. Kevin was the right age, and he's a wonderful actor, and Ness wasn't exactly like that, but he was still damn good.
Was it strange to go watch someone else play that part?
It was, yeah, it was strange until I got into it, and I saw, you know, Larry, I look at an audience, and I saw the audience really was into it. Now, the guy in front of me said, "Get him, Ness, get that dirty, rotten nitty." And I thought to myself, it's really working. So whatever I thought didn't really matter. The show worked.
Naples, Florida, hello.
Good evening, Mr. Stack. It really is a pleasure to talk to you. I'm one of your biggest fans and never miss Unsolved Mysteries. I have a two-part question. I'd like to know, first of all, how you come up with the cases that you present on Unsolved Mysteries, and also if you have ever become personally involved in a case where you really wanted to see it solved. Thanks.
That's a good question. There's an awful lot of work goes into the research. They go through the archives of newspapers. They work hand in glove with the FBI and the DA's offices, and an awful lot of people come in now, particularly with the success of the show. They write letters, and we have to serve two masters. The show has to be interesting enough to keep an audience. By the same token, it's got to, of course, be valid, and we check all the stories out. I do get involved. It's like a doctor. In fact, Johnny Frankenheimer called me about Harold Hecht's son, who had disappeared. Harold Hecht Hill Lancaster is a producer, very famous, and wanted the show on the air in the hopes that they would find him. Now, we didn't find him. Mickey Thompson and Trudy, who broke the land speed record, as you probably know, Larry, he was killed by a couple of druggies, and they think, and I know Mickey's sister, and you become involved without wanting to, like with victims against violent crimes. So there is more than just a job. There's a heartline, because these people exist or have been killed, have families, the kids have been molested, and boy, there's a lot of bad people out there.
Turning to comedy, when you did Airplane, are you comfortable in that? Do you enjoy that? I mean, there's no timing. You got to be your own sense of timing. There's no audience to work off.
It's wonderful. It's like Bill Wellman said, you don't have to have any blood on your vest when you come home. And I love comedy. I started with that. You know, I did To Be or Not to Be as a kid. And
That's right. You were the lieutenant in the third row when Jack Benny looked down. And when he said To Be or Not to Be, you got up and went to his wife.
And I had the greatest piece of direction from Ernst Lubitsch, the great Ernst Lubitsch. I said, now, Ernst, what will I do? What will I think about? And what should I do? He said, you will think of absolutely nothing with no expression. Just get up and walk out.
So you began in comedy. You're comfortable in comedy.
Very, very much so. In fact, I wish that if the Zucker brothers and Jimmy Abrams are listening in, please put me in another show again. Leslie Nielsen, one of my old chums, is now a big star as a result of having done Police Squad, Naked Gun, and all the rest of it. So it's fun, and they pay you for having fun.
Yeah, but you're extraordinarily talented at it, yet basically, like you and Leslie Nielsen, you're not like funny guys. You don't sit in the corner and tell jokes all night, but you play comedy well.
Yeah, well, you have to have a certain ironic sense of humor. I grew up in the business, and I've seen the greatest. You know, Gable's like my surrogate father. I played polo with Spencer Tracy, and I learned very quickly that it's a game, it's a club, you belong. It's like recess. And as Gable said, is that when it's good, it's like being paid for having a good time. When it's bad, it's like digging your grave. So, you know.
I love that. It's like recess. Do you have any idea Airplane would go like that?
No, nobody did. For two years or so, the kids were coming around, kind of like Judy Garland talking to Mickey Rooney, let's put a show on in the garage. Nobody had any money. And when Paramount did it, they did it because it was the cheapest show that had been offered them in about 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I came on the set, and Lloyd Bridges had no idea what he was doing. They hung him upside down, and they had the co-pilot made of rubber that blew up, and some of the people thought these guys were nuts. And they were not just nuts, they were just about 10 years ahead of their time, is all.
And you could watch that over and over and still laugh. Our guest is Robert Stack. He stars in The Return of Eliot Ness. It's on NBC. Sunday night, we'll be back with more phone calls after this.
You don't know what you're talking about. Get out of my house.
Take a look at this.
Yeah, so what?
I found this next to Gil Labine's bed after he was shot.
I told you to get out of my house.
Ness, let's go, Ness. This business killed my best friend and almost killed his son. I've got a job to do, Roses. I'm gonna finish it.
At the top of the hour on World News, a basketball legend says he'll use his magic off the court, fighting AIDS. We'll also tell you the difference between testing positive for the AIDS virus and actually having AIDS. And abortion, efforts to make it illegal, and what some people plan to do if that happens. World News is right after Larry King.
Which bank in Turkey bridges the East with the West? From the fruits of the past, helps to build for the future. From the pages of history, speeds the winds of change. From a wealth of tradition, creates rich new opportunities. From time-honored crafts, weaves a brighter tomorrow. It's the same bank that unites the trade routes of yesteryear with the modern ways of today, takes the delights of Turkey to the tables of the world, from whose very source flows the energy for growth, developing what nature has given to invest in what man has made. Ziraat Bank, the strongest bridge for your investments in Turkey from industry to tourism. Ziraat, by far the largest, most profitable and progressive bank in Turkey.
In many ways, it looks and feels like nothing we have ever built. In many ways, it looks and feels like everything we've ever built.
If you could taste time, caring, dedication. If you could taste the sun, rain, fresh air. If you could taste tradition and pride. This is what it would taste like every time. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
It's Larry King Live. Tomorrow night, Kathy and Jeffrey Willits, their first national television appearance, taking your phone calls. The couple from Fort Lauderdale. She's the one who slept with a lot of people and said it was due to a malady of hers. And the state thinks it may have been prostitution. Will Chamberlain will be here tomorrow night as well. And don't forget, Monday night, Gary Sick, finally his book on the October surprise is out. Ed Meese will debate him. Robert Stack is our guest. Back to the calls. Pueblo, Colorado. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Stack. Could you please tell me a little about your relationship with JFK?
With who?
JFK.
JFK,
Did you know
yes.
John? Yeah.
Yes, I was doing a movie, and a friend of mine brought him on the set, and I met him, and he was a charming fellow. And this friend of mine also happened to have, we had an apartment together. He had one of the keys to it, which he also gave to Jack Kennedy. And so I sort of would bump into him occasionally coming out of the apartment.
What are you saying, Robert?
I'm saying that he had a lot of the ladies, he was very attractive. Get me out of this. Anyway, he was a very attractive fellow. The ladies loved him, and he used the apartment quite often. And I found him an absolutely, I've told him once, I said, why do you waste your time in politics? You should be an actor. These gals really love you, you know? So, but he never took my advice.
Were any of the ladies familiar to you?
Yes.
Honolulu with Robert Stack. Hello.
Stack, what do you remember most about filming The High and the Mighty with John Wayne?
One of my all-time favorite movies.
Oh, yes. Well, Duke was my boss, and he was a nifty guy. But beyond that, I remember William Wellman, who directed in a way that some of the old-time directors used to do. He just scared the hell out of everybody. He scared me, so he got that extracurricular energy by just really scaring the socks off you. In fact, Doe Avedon kept bumping into the chairs going up the passageway, and he kept saying, "What's the matter with you, Doe? Can't you even walk?" And she said, "I can't walk. You've got me so frightened. My knees won't work, Mr. Wellman." Then he'd put his arms around her. You know, it was a kind of a game, but he scared the socks off of all of us.
Barkville, Barkville, Canada. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Stack. Thank you for a wonderful legacy of motion pictures and performances through your career. I'd like to know what your main memories are of working with Robert Young and Jimmy Stewart on The Mortal Storm, and I'd like to know if you've kept in touch with Bruce Gordon, Paul Picerni, and some of the other people from The Untouchables, and were they asked to be in the new film?
The Mortal Storm was a wonderful experience, and of course I came in brand spanking new, working with the best actors and actresses in the world, Jimmy Stewart, Maggie Sullivan, Bob Young, Frank Morgan, and just to be with them was fantastic. We found ourselves inadvertently not knowing on Hitler's death list, he had singled out 2 motion pictures, Confessions of a Nazi Spy and The Mortal Storm, not if, but when he was going to win the war. He'd just gone through the Maginot Line. Looked like he was going to win the war, and all I can remember is that everybody was kind of scared. I was too dumb to be. The other thing is that this show I'm doing on Ness now has nothing to do with the Untouchables. It's 20 years later, and it's just a retired guy who goes back to war without, if you brought all the guys in, it'd be kind of like Keystone Cops. We may use them later on if it goes again, but not on this one.
So these are not the Untouchables. This is Ness back on a caper.
This is exactly.
And the title is The Return of Eliot Ness, and our guest is Robert Stack, and of course he hosts Unsolved Mysteries, one of the most popular shows on television. We'll be back with our remaining moments and some more calls after this.
Art Maldo didn't kill Marty Labine.
Of course he did. What makes you think he didn't?
Like I said, I've been around too long.
Then who did?
I don't know. Somebody close to him.
Bobby?
Maybe.
Helen was his woman.
Or maybe it was you.
Me? No. Helen was my best friend.
So how'd she like it when Bobby started calling on you?
Bobby and me? Are you crazy? Art would kill me.
Not if you get him first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen McGinnis at the CNN Center in Atlanta. During the early morning hours across the East, 54 cities with record overnight low temperatures. Going to be another cold night. In the afternoon, warms up just a little bit, 20s and 30s, all the way down through the Ohio Valley. But across the West, we did see a few record highs, like at San Francisco, tied at 82 degrees. And Tucson, Arizona made it to 88. Well, coming up for Friday afternoon, in Albuquerque, it'll be fair and 63, Seattle, 55. Rainfall the early part of the day. This funnel system will sweep through, and then just a little bit of rain will start to pull out of that area. Portland, pretty much the same. Rain early, an afternoon high temperature of 57. Boise, 55, and the rain comes late there. Unseasonably cold from the Great Lakes into the Central Plains, where Kansas City will only be 33 degrees. Dallas, a chilly 49. We're watching a frontal system and an area of low pressure that may be the nor'easter that races up the northeast coast by this weekend, once again producing the high surf advisories. Now these forecasts for Friday.
An interesting thing is happening to driving enthusiasts. They're multiplying, and that's a blessed event for the Saab 9000 Turbo, which not only does 0 to 60 faster than a BMW 535i, but has more passenger and cargo space than any other imported sedan. The Saab 9000 Turbo, the sports sedan you grow into, not out of.
It was a good day for ideas. Plans for a sidewalk cafe were finalized. A river walk was proposed. And someone had the vision to bring luxury and romance back to train travel. Keep those ideas coming, and we'll keep making them look their best. LaserJet printers from Hewlett-Packard. If you could taste time, the sun, rain, tradition, this is what it would taste like every time. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
Had this doozy of a sore throat. Know what my doc suggested? Psst, psst. Chloroseptic. I actually felt the pain go away in seconds.
Because Chloroseptic penetrates on contact for fastest relief. More doctors say, psst, psst, Chloroseptic spray.
Tonight on Sports Tonight, the entire sports world is rocked by the sudden retirement of Irvin Magic Johnson, who says he has contracted the HIV virus. We will cover the story from stem to stern on Sports Tonight at 11 Eastern. Join us.
For a transcript of Larry King Live, send $5 to Larry King Live Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. Or call 303-831-9000.
Grafton, Vermont, for Robert Stack. Hello.
Bob, this is Bob Barrett, former naval aviator at Naval Air Station Alameda. We shot skeet together, and I used to bring your ducks back from north of Sacramento. You still handle a gun, and how the hell do you stay so young?
Well, I got a young wife, thank you, you rascal. Of course I remember. We had some wonderful times. We flew the ducks back, and I don't know whoever picked them, but I had to sell a duck lodge eventually, but a lot of good memories. Man, remember you shoot those birds and bring them back and cook them, and red wine, and those were the days.
Mesa, Arizona for Robert Stack. Hello.
Hi, thank you, Larry. I hope to see you on more Braves telecasts next year.
You will.
All right, Mr. Stack, 2 quick questions for you. After such a long time, was it difficult fitting back into the character of Eliot Ness? And also, having such a wonderful career that you've had, and a career that I happen to admire very much, do you find that you can never really have acting licked? I mean, do you know it all, or do you constantly learn on each new project?
Well, I'll answer your last question first. Betty Davis put it best. You know, acting, she said, was like a parachute jump. You had to give yourself chances to try out to see if the parachute would open. And if you don't have that continuing test to see if you're any good, it takes a lot of the kick out of it. And I forgot what the first question was.
Getting into Ness again.
Getting into Ness. Ness is a character that didn't come too difficult to me. It wasn't too difficult a job because I know so many people like him. I've known Audie Murphy. I've known some brave characters, and there's a commonality to their behavior. They don't talk about what they do. They just go ahead and do it. And so putting on the vest and the hat, you know, and if it's written right, it came back, and of course it's this is Ness's dad, but you know, there you are. It's been
sort of like Written on the Wind.
Oh yeah,
little pun, Robert. Great role.
Yes,
thanks so much. Great seeing you. Good luck with Eliot Ness. Robert Stack, one of my favorite people, great guy, and he stars in the TV movie The Return of Eliot Ness Sunday night on NBC. We'll be with you in an hour. The Larry King Show on Mutual Radio. Ron Brown is the guest, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Tomorrow night, the famed South Florida couple, Kathy and Jeffrey Willits, and Wilt Chamberlain will be here. Susan Rook is standing by in Atlanta. Bernard Shaw here in Washington. They'll co-anchor the World News. Bernie will lead us into it with the story of Magic Johnson. Right, Bern?
Indeed, Larry. Thanks very much. Coming up on World News, the AIDS virus reaches the top ranks of professional sports. Basketball star Magic Johnson says he has tested positive and is leaving the sport he loves. And a new Democratic tax plan promises to take from the rich and give to the middle class. Those stories and more right after this local cable break.
Not after I shout from every rooftop in Texas that you're the only baby killer around here.
The grand jury won't believe that.
Well, grand jury's local folk. They'll see you're just a new gal. Inexperienced, overworked, careless. Stuck-up little thing from the big city. Who's gonna believe you?